I I've had to use an elastic band to attach my ring light to the laptop because I don't have a stand for it on the desk. So
the struggle is real, isn't it?
yeah.
It's a hard life. Anyway, I can't even speak now. Anywho. Anyways, welcome back everybody to another episode of Tell Me Where I'm Going Wrong. My name is Josh. I'm one of the hosts, and together with my co-host Sean, we present this podcast where two exes who are good friends talk about whatever is on their mind that week, whatever is riling them up about the world and life and society, etc. How are you, Sean?
I'm okay. Obviously, being in England, we have to moan about the weather.
Oh yeah, first agenda item.
Well, we were talking about like the light of situation. Obviously, if you look at us now, it looks like you're sat in like a dark room with a torch pointed at your face. And
That's pretty much what is happening. That's a very accurate description.
It's not even 6 p.m. here in London, and it's almost completely dark. So I'm not interested in this behavior.
And on Sunday, the clocks go back here. So it's, 6 p.m. It's getting dark at 6 p.m. So that means next week it's going to be getting dark at 5 p.m.
Doesn't it go the opposite?
No, because they go back an hour. So now it will be 5:45, not 5:45. And so, it's just, that long, dark winter is
Do you know why that happens? Like what's the history of
daylight
that?
savings?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I've heard different theories. I've heard one that it was to do with farmers, and although that when you say that out loud, it doesn't actually really make sense, does it? Like farmers will just get up whatever time they want to get up. And then I heard something about something to do with the war, perhaps. Again, I don't know. And then the other thing I've heard is that it saves electricity, or it saves power, because it tries to adjust people's being awake schedule, or the majority of people's being awake schedule, to the brighter hours of the day. But I don't know.
You've just said that it's going to get darker earlier now.
Yeah, I know. But then I suppose, because at the moment when I get up at 7 o'clock in the morning, it's still dark. So next week it should, but I don't know, it should be starting to get light. I have no idea.
If somebody had asked me what happens, I would have said that it was the opposite of what you've said, that it goes like the clocks go like at 1 a.m. it suddenly becomes 2 a.m. But you're saying it's the opposite.
No, it's the opposite. At 1 a.m. it goes back to midnight.
I wouldn't know that. I would know.
It's a long dark winter ahead of us, basically. So we have to figure out this lighting situation for the podcast.
This is as good as it gets.
I do feel like I'm being interrogated.
Do you know in Australia it gets dark early in Australia, doesn't it?
Yeah,
do you know?
But the other.
No, but I mean just normally, like without any clock fiddling, doesn't it? Like for a large part of the year, it just gets dark about 6 p.m. Because I remember
it was a bit later than that. Closer to the equator, there's less fluctuation.
Right. Because I remember when I first came to the UK in 1998, I was never been so shocked in my life by how bright it was in British summertime at nighttime.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it would be like 10 p.m. and the sun would still be just going down.
Yeah, or it would be like 3:30 in the morning. You'd be going home from like a night out at the I can't remember the name of that place in Manchester, but you'd be going home at like 3:30 in the morning, and the sun would be coming up. It was really...
Yeah. So I'd never seen anything like that growing up in Australia. I lived in Australia my whole life, and up until that point, and I had never seen.
Where was that from? Was that something one of our friends said once?
Yeah,
I lived in Australia my whole life.
Yeah,
maybe they didn't say quite such an Ocker accent.
We were playing.
Oh yeah.
Should I name them?
Maybe not.
Or should I just shame them?
Just say the letter J.
And we were in a pub in King's Cross in Sydney, and we were playing pool or snooker or whatever you call it, and we were playing against people we didn't know, who had just met in the pub, and we were trying to argue with them about the rules, like if you sink a white ball, what
Is it
happens?
a
You get
penalty? Do you
two
get two
shots.
shots? Yeah.
And our friend, starting with the letter J, yelled at these people, I've lived in Australia my whole life, and this is the way that I've played. And I I would say that
Isn't
she
it?
didn't mean it like this, but one of the people that we were arguing with was Asian, and
Oh,
we
I
were
don't
all
remember that detail.
yeah, that's what was not funny, but that's what was so alarming about it. We were like, "No, she didn't mean it like that. She means she's been playing pool all her
Yeah, yeah,
life."
yeah.
And
Not,
because
yeah,
obviously the person we were playing against was of Asian appearance, but they were also Australian. It wasn't like she was
yeah.
trying to say you're not Australian, but
But
that's what we used to always tease her about was her
yeah,
how inopportune it was that she said that, and how it also might be conceived as an attack on this person.
yeah. It's funny the things that stay with you. There was a similar incident. I was on the bus with a family member who, again, will remain nameless, and they yelled really loud on the bus, "Oh my God, that black van driver!" Just something, and I kind of remember what it was. And they were talking about a man driving a black van, not a black man driving a van. But the way they said it so loud, everyone on the bus was like, "What?"
But I've never
And
heard anyone say name the color of a van unless it's a white van.
well, yeah, and that's a real, but that's a very English thing, isn't it? Like a white
Yeah,
van,
yeah,
which does not mean a man who's Caucasian. It means a man driving a white van, because there's a
yeah,
real stereotype, isn't there, um, around white van drivers
yeah. I mean,
or
I've heard it all.
drivers of white vans, I should
I've
say.
heard it a lot with when people say black cab driver,
Yeah.
because that is like black cabs. If you've been to London, you'll know the taxis that go around, they're black, and they have a very specific look or model make to them. They're a type of
Hmm.
car. And
Hmm.
so people refer to them as black cabs. And so if you say to someone, "Oh, I had a horrible black cab driver the other day," if you're not from London, you would instantly think they're talking about the color of that driver. But if
Hmm.
you're in London, you don't think that. You just think, "Oh, yeah, they were a driver who was driving a black cab."
Yeah. Yeah. So it's very the subtleties of like adjectives and nouns. Um, but anyway, what were we talking about? I've lived in Australia my whole life. Oh, you were talking about the late. Oh, look, I've shown my gammy hand already, and we're only 6 minutes in. Um,
It looks red again. Is
it's.
that
Do you know what? I'll give you the brief update in a second. But yeah, we were talking about the daylight. You know how when you first came to the UK after having lived in Australia your whole life.
yeah.
Um,
Well, another shocking thing that happened when I first moved here, that first summer, was I went out for a day for a picnic to what's one of those parks near Manchester where it was like it was kind of like a big grand old house,
oh yeah, like the
what
something country park or
or
something,
Heaton
or
Park or something, some
yeah,
sort of
yeah.
place, and I went there with Helen and some friends, and I remember thinking, because I just suffered through the end of the winter, the British winter, and I thought,
Hmm.
"Oh, well, I I'll never get burnt," and I can remember getting sunburnt in Manchester
Mm.
because it was just
Who'd have,
peculiarly hot, you know?
who'd have thunk it? So anyway, my hand did get better, but then it got worse again. And so I'm seeing a doctor on Tuesday next week, Tuesday. I'm seeing a doctor,
Dr.
because it,
Jones?
uh-huh, and it's still, it doesn't really hurt anymore, but if I push it, it's sore and there's a hard lump. And then, as you can probably see, in my sleep, I scratch it because it gets so itchy, and I actually sort of scratched the top off. Anyway,
Can't you
that's why.
cover it when you sleep?
Well, the doctor said I shouldn't cover it, but I mean that was 3 weeks ago, so maybe I can cover it now. I don't know. Anyway, I know it's not the content our listeners and viewers are tuning in for, but
But
I
you
thought I
say
would.
that all the time, and if they're not what are they tuning in for then? Because all we talk about is the weather, your gammy
Maybe they're
hand, and
tuning
vampires.
in for your CPAP recap. Have you got any CPAP
Oh, well,
recaps
no,
for us this week?
except my CCAP, my new mask is really
CPAP.
bruised.
C.
What's that?
So you said CCAP.
My CCAP repap. No, but it's the new mask is marking my nose so much. caked on the foundation today. Like,
Have you
absolutely.
slapped it on, Sue? Have you pushed it
I
into every pore?
I had to put it on with a trowel, Sue. It was it was like it is a red band across my nose. It looks like I'm a boxer. It looks like I've been boxing. And I even went out the other day for, I don't know, a meeting or to, I don't know, harass somebody about something, and somebody said to me, "What happened to you?" And
And
I'm
did
like,
you say,
"Oh."
well, where shall I start?
I said, "A crocodile bit my face." But yeah, I don't know what to do about it because I'm trying to position it slightly differently, but it is quite traumatic waking up and it looking like you've been punched in the face with, like in a
Yeah.
professional boxing match. But I sleep so much better with it on. Like, I can't sleep without it now. Like, I don't know what
Mm,
would happen to me.
hmm
I can never go back. So,
once you see Pap, you'll never go back.
mhm. CPAP recap forever.
Um,
Can I talk to you about something depressing?
but yeah, of course.
What is it about me that I'm obsessed with watching things about 9/11? And I don't mean that nowhere near. I'm not a conspiracy person. Like, I don't watch any of that. I don't give that any credence. I'm not into that. I'm just curious, verging on fascinated by learning new bits of information or looking at historical videos or documents and reading about it. Why am I attracted to that as a subject matter?
I think there are a few different reasons why you might be, but I think on a cultural level, it's one of the most defining moments of this century so far, for particularly for people in, you know, quote unquote Western society. Um,
Mhm.
I think it was a real paradigm shift for people, because not only not only did was there a cultural shift after 9/11, there's so much more discourse and discussion and uh, about like Islam. There was so much more Islamophobia because of that.
Mhm.
Um, Things changed in our day-to-day lives so much, like the security measures that we have to go through in our day-to-day lives have changed so much, particularly for those of us who are, privileged enough to be able to fly around the world
It's
now
hard
and
to
then.
remember what it was like before 9/11, isn't it? How
Yeah,
drastically different it was.
yeah. Um, and the just trying to think what the right word is, but the not the fear, but the instability that oh no, that's not even the right word. You know what I'm trying to say? Like we'd lived through a relatively peaceful time in the UK, in the US, in Australia, in again, for lack of a better term, in Western societies. I mean, obviously there have been a lot of conflicts around the world, but in Western societies, we'd lived through a relatively peaceful time. I mean, those countries I mentioned have all waged war and invaded other countries,
Yes,
but
yeah.
in terms of where we lived, it was a relatively safe period, and that all changed, and it was the first of many terror attacks.
But why do you think then, if that's new or fresh or the unknown to me at that time, why now, 25 years later, is it something that I feel not obsessed with, but I have a high curiosity, a high level of curiosity?
Is it like a form of like when you watch horror films, which I know you
Yes.
do a lot, it's it's reliving. Is it to do with having experienced trauma in your own life? And is it a way of you feeling that terror, feeling that fear, and reliving trauma in some form, but within the safe confines of your laptop or whatever you're watching it on? Is it that it gives you an outlet for that fear
Well,
and that terror?
I've I've got a theory, and I don't know if this is just cockamamie like theory, but I have obviously a lot of issues, like you said, around trauma, childhood trauma,
Hmm.
PTSD related to that. And a lot of that manifests in my feeling out of control or feeling like I need to control things. And watching things over and over again that I know the outcome of
Hmm.
might be some sort of self-medicating therapy for me
Yeah, there's a
where
therapeutic element to it.
yeah, where that's I watch, uh, the same ep sometimes I've watched the same episode of the Trixie and Katja show, uh, 10 times, and I know
Hmm.
exactly what they're gonna say, or I've watched the same film when I was younger the same time. I wonder if these 9/11 videos or information is another way of me revisiting something that I obviously know the outcome of, but I'm
Mm.
also looking at something very terrifying and traumatic, especially the stories of survival appeal to me, or I have a feeling of I want to hear how these people have not only dealt with the emergency of that they found themselves in, but how they've dealt and lived with trauma after that. I find that
Yeah.
really an appealing nature of the storytelling to me. I want to know how they've dealt with like PTSD and trauma over decades, and I think I'm looking for answers.
Do you also do you seek out videos that show the actual planes like going into the buildings, or do you avoid those videos, or are you kind of like
I don't
indifferent?
avoid them, but I mean they all of them have that in them. Like normally
Yeah.
all the videos start with, "Oh, this happened on this date. Wasn't it
But
terrible?"
because there's also I'm wondering because I like to watch videos of things like twisters, tornadoes, like
Mhm.
storm chasers and stuff like that. Um, I mean, I get like, I'll do it for like half an hour and then I'm like, okay, I'm bored of it now. But there's a weird comfort in like scaring yourself about like external forces, the power and the danger of external forces, and the fact, I suppose, that you can watch them on a screen, but then feel safe and secure knowing that it's not happening to you. But I don't
Yeah.
know, you
Well,
know,
I think you've been in therapy with somebody who's told you something similar to this, but my therapist once suggested to me that the way that I catastrophize in my brain, the way that if I'm walking down the street and I think to myself, "Oh, there's a bus coming. What if I accidentally got pushed in front of the bus and then the bus flipped over and then
yeah,
I was injured, but where's my phone?" And I could be walking down the street and have this entire disaster
this
storyline
entire narrative. Yep,
run through
yep,
my head. And my
yep.
therapist said that that might be a way of me reminding myself that I'm in control or finding ways to feel in control in a
Hmm.
world where I feel out of control. And so if
Yeah,
I watch videos of 9/11 and I hear survivor stories, I or even stories about people who didn't survive, but there's enough of their story to hear about how they tried to survive.
right.
It's a way of me just like, well,
Yeah, but
a lot of it is procrastination as well, I have to be honest, to put my hands up and say it's a way for me to just delay putting
yeah.
it's a way for me to put off what I need to do.
Yeah, it's
But
escapism in some ways
yeah,
as well. Particularly when you said about rewatching old episodes of things that old films. Like I've had periods, because we were together at the time. I've had periods of my life where I've been very, very, very depressed, very unwell, and I would just kind of watch the same films on repeat. And I can look back now. I'm in a better place, and I can see how unwell I was. But I suppose at the time it was a therapeutic approach to being so overwhelmed with your current situation that you can feel some emotion and feel some level of um what's the word, like processing
yeah.
through a fictional narrative or through an external narrative. um
I mean, what
yeah
else do you do that with? I do wanna talk to you about something about 9/11 though, but what else do you do that with?
but
I sometimes do it with those apps on my phone where you play like Bubble Popper or,
Oh yeah. Well,
they're just repetitive over and over and over.
yeah. I mean, just before I talk about that though, I just want to say, yeah, like when you were talking about what your therapist was saying, I think when I was in therapy years ago, and I've talked about this, the therapist then told me that it comes under the term negative automatic thinking. So exactly what you were saying, like you would invent this entire scenario of, catastrophizing a situation. And I remember in that therapy section, actually, one of the situations I described was, going down into the tube station on my way home from work, and obviously, hearing the train and running to catch the train, tripping on the stairs, like falling down the stairs, like, and falling on top of like a young newborn baby in a pram or something, and like injuring the baby, like all the most like absurd catastrophes that you could imagine in the
Yep.
situation. And it really fucks you up.
Yeah.
You really, it's like when you have like bad dreams where you've done something really awful in a dream. It's like, yes, you can rationalize it and go, yes, but that didn't happen. That's not reality. But your body still, is
Oh, yeah.
left with this weight of,
It's weird. I don't know. I would like to hear if other people do this because I know you do it and I
oh,
know
yeah,
I do it. But like if
yeah,
I walk to the supermarket, it will happen 20 times between my house and the supermarket. It'll
hmm
happen like, I don't know, a bike courier will race past me and not even nearly hit me. They'll be 5 meters away from me, but I think, I wonder
yeah,
what would happen if they hit me and flew over
yeah.
the handlebars and then I had to help. And
Oh
then,
my God.
but,
Yeah,
and I'll go through this whole imagined story. And before I know it, I'm still in the story, but I'm in there picking out the fruit and veg that I'm ordering. So I've gone past the
yeah,
scenario,
yeah,
and even I'll finish my shop and I'll say, "Oh, I'll stop thinking about that disaster now." And then on the way back out again, "Oh, what if the security tag on something I bought accidentally goes off?
yeah,
And what if somebody like grabs me and I have to try and explain to them what would I do? Oh, what would I do if, like, when they arrest me for thinking I stole something, my phone dies of battery and I can't get hold of Hill, and
yeah,
then he's worried." This will all it's quite exhausting.
yeah,
Like you said,
yeah,
it's quite exhausting to go through that, but that's how I think, and so when I watch these 9/11 videos, I obviously, there's a bit of where you like to think you insert yourself into something, and what would I do? How could
yeah,
I have done better than
yeah.
somebody who didn't survive? And I don't say
And
that
is that
disrespectfully, like,
Yeah, no,
that's
no, no,
just
I know what you
human
mean,
nature.
yeah. Yeah, is it like it's like a form of information gathering. So you're like,
Yes.
I'm such a catastrophist that I need to watch these disaster videos. So when the worst possible disaster that you can imagine happening in modern day, society,
Yeah.
when that happens, I'll maybe know what to do. And
Yeah,
I think about
and
that
of
every
course,
time, like every single time, I'm not
yeah.
joking, like every single time I get on a plane, I make my peace with the fact that I'm going to die in a crash. Like
So
every single time. And,
and what's so weird about this is, like, with 9/11, if my brain thinks it's learning survival tactics for the future, what are the possibilities of that exact scenario happening again, where I'm in one tall
yeah.
building, the next tall building next to me gets hit and then falls down. I'll know not to hang around in case mine falls down, or I'll know when I run outside to use the underground tunnels because there's debris and people falling. Like, it's
hmm
so ridiculous that I
Yeah.
watch it as if it's some sort of informative survival hack skill, but I do. My brain watches it, scouring over it for information about how I might have survived. And it's
mm
25 years ago. I was on the other side of the world from this. Nothing to do with me. But
mm.
yeah, anyway, so sometimes though, when I go through these um,
Nats.
possible,
So that's Nats. Nats is what we named them in their
what's that?
therapy because it's negative automatic thoughts or negative automatic thinking. So we nicknamed them
Nats.
Nats. Um, Sorry, I cut you off. What were you going to
No, well,
say?
when I do go through some of these I don't always go through 9/11 phases. Obviously, I get triggered around 9/11 or September 11th because algorithms start feeding these videos to people.
Yeah.
So we're coming out of that really now, aren't we? So there's probably, I've just had a
We're
batch of
coming
that.
out of 9/11 season, heading towards Halloween.
Yeah, truly. Like, it's that's now my algorithms have switched over. I'm now like
Yeah.
looking at like Michael Myers doing the Dead Dance by Lady Gaga and videos like that where people dress up as Michael Myers and do Lady Gaga dances. So I'm going out of my 9/11 feeds into my Halloween feeds on my social media. But I do find out some information that I didn't know or has somehow managed to pass me by over a quarter of a century. And this one thing I've found very interested and I wanted to tell you about was there's a person who is certified as the first fatality of 9/11, even though he most definitely wasn't the first person to die. But the way that he his body was taken from the site to a coroner's office, he was marked as the first claimed victim, like the first body
Okay.
that was identifiable.
Legally identified, not
So he's
declared
like
dead.
victim or fatality 0001 or whatever number it is. But his name was Michael Judge, and it's spelled Mychal. And he was a priest or with the New York Fire Department. So he was like, I don't know what they call them, like chaplain or, he was the chaplain. He was the chaplain for the NYCFD. Is that what the acronym is? New
I
York
suppose, yeah.
City Fire Department. He was in the bottom of the tower with the first responders, and he was helping, and he was whatever chaplains do, like praying over people who are injured, giving counsel to people. And they were in the bottom of the tower, the second tower or the first tower, whatever. I get confused by the towers. You'd think I'd know after all the hours of 9/11 videos
Got
I've
all your
watched.
research.
But one of the towers collapsed first.
Hmm.
And the debris from that, I mean, it was like a million bombs going off. All
Yeah.
of the debris came into the lobby of the other tower, and he died. He was hit by a piece of concrete or whatever, and some of his colleagues from the fire department carried him out, took him to a fire station or a police station, and then took him to the wherever his body was kept. And so he was recorded as, because his body was taken out before the second tower collapsed. They
Right.
were able
Okay.
to get his body out. But what was very interesting to me was this man was born in Brooklyn in 1933 and grew up in the Great Depression. And his father died when he was very young, and he had to get a job when he was a child shining shoes at Penn Station.
Hmm.
So he had this very almost like, what do you call it, like Miracle on 42nd Street. It's almost sort of romanticized in the way you hear about young kids growing up in the Depression.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
when he was 15, he entered religious training. And later on, he was an alcoholic in 1971, but he became sober in 1978. And he became appointed chaplain with the fire department in 1992. But he was very outspoken um, for queer rights and people living with HIV and AIDS. He would march in pride parades, and he used to also do a lot of work with sex workers and drug addicts, drug users in New York. And so he would hold services for people with AIDS, and he also championed the Catholic Church to try and let gay people serve as priests or chaplains or
Okay.
whatever they do. And
Yeah.
he was never open publicly, but his colleagues afterwards said, yeah, we knew that he was a gay man and he lived as a
Mm.
gay man. And he kept diaries for the last 2 years of his life. And in that, he spoke about being a gay man. He talked about the man that he was in a relationship with. And I found that really quite touching that, think of how many stories of people who died, like, just got disappeared after
Mm.
those attacks. But this man was, I suppose, not the least famous or the most famous. He was somewhere in the middle. And these stories about all the work that he did for people living with AIDS in New York in the
Mm.
80s and 90s, um, I found it really, really touching. Obviously, I'm not into the religion part of it.
No. No. What
But
do you think? So, if you've watched a lot, a lot of footage, documentaries, whatever, a lot of media surrounding 9/11. What's your takeaway? Do you think that there was any government involvement? Because
Oh,
the reason I asked that, just before you answer that, the reason I asked was because I was watching something the other day, and it's based on a true story. And it's, it's something you hear about in films and TV and in documentaries about how, intelligence forces have heard, what's the term they use? Like chattering about, we've raised the security level risk to amber because there's been chatter.
chatter.
Is it chatter? Yeah,
I think
chatter.
it's chatter.
And I'm
Yeah.
like, what does that mean? Because if you were a terrorist,
Hmm.
wouldn't you be like, well, obviously we know to only, if there was chatter about something, then
Yeah, I don't understand that.
what
Like, you think
chatter? Like,
if somebody was going to go to the trouble of hijacking 4 commercial airliners, there would be a way that that didn't get out. The
yeah,
only way I can think if it did would be there was an informant who felt guilty
yeah,
or was able to get word out, but then they would have stopped it.
yeah. I
So
find it,
I don't understand that, but, from a
but
lot of what I've watched, that
mhm,
they had the authorities had no idea that it was gonna happen. No idea at all.
the authorities, but was there, as some of the sort of, conspiracy theories put forth, do you think there could be a possibility that the government knew it was going to happen, or that the government, not that the government orchestrated it, which I know some people, argue, but that the government knew that it was going to happen, but either let it go ahead knowingly, or just didn't know how to, because if the government knew something like that was going to happen, but they didn't know the specifics,
Hmm.
it's like, it's a trade-off, isn't it? Like, they could have said, okay, we think this is going to happen, so we're going to ground all flights for until further notice. But of course, there'd be uproar. People would want to live their lives.
Yeah,
And so
because
it's almost,
before 9/11 happened, you couldn't have told people.
no,
No one would have known. You wouldn't have
no,
known that the disaster that would have unfolded, and
no.
so you couldn't have told anybody, and people would have
Mm,
been like, so indignant if they were asked to give up their right to fly whenever they want,
mm,
wherever they want.
mm,
I mean, some people still were even after it happened. Some people were demanding to be let on planes, and
yeah, yeah.
I
But
don't
yeah,
know.
like,
I don't think we know enough, and maybe in 50 years stuff will come out. But then you think, even with like things that the CIA or the US government were involved in 2 generations ago, even if that does start to come out, people just shrug and say, "Yeah, okay, whatever." Like
yeah,
with military
yeah.
coups that have been staged, or
It's
the
when there's
things.
that distance, of time,
Yeah,
then
so at the
people are
time when it
less.
happens, it's too much to bear to think about that the government might be involved. And I'm not
Mm,
saying they are, or I even think they are, but people don't even want to entertain the idea.
mm.
And then if enough time passes, like even now, 25 years later, I don't think most people would care. I
No,
Could you imagine that there would be young people now who don't really understand what 9/11 is? They get it. They get the imagery and
yeah,
you'll see
mm,
the image of the plane flying in. But if you ask them to explain either the timeline or what happened,
yeah,
or what were the consequences of it, I
yeah.
don't think people would know. One
No,
of
it's
the
very hard to. It's an experiential thing. You have to kind of go through it, and it's kind of like, when we were growing up, we heard stories of wartime, like Second World War, or even First World War from like my grandparents and stuff like that, and it was, it didn't even seem real, and especially because in those days, there wasn't as much um, video footage available to kind of really try and convey what it was like to live through it. But even then, it was just,
Yeah.
was not. You had to really have experienced it.
One Another interesting fact, which is very upsetting about 9/11, especially the what happened at the World Trade Centers, as the ongoing health effects on the public and the
Mm,
emergency responders, the first
hmm.
responders down there. Do you know there's a World Trade Center health program set up by the government to help first responders and the members of the public who were affected by the toxic dust.
Oh, really? No, I
And
didn't
it's,
know that.
I think at the moment, more than 127,000 people are enrolled in it. And of that, more than 82,000 were volunteers or responders, and 44,000 or more than 44,000 were civilians in the area.
Mm,
Did you know that as of like I think a couple of months ago, 6,700 people in the program in that health program have died,
mm.
more than twice the people who died on the day, and that's from like the diseases and illnesses related to
So it's
the
not just
toxic.
like dying of old age, it's deaths directly
No,
attributed
so yeah,
to.
like cancers, different conditions, rare illnesses, but some cases these illnesses take decades to surface, right? You know,
Mm,
like if, but another thing that's a comorbidity is PTSD. So if
mm.
you've gone through something like you survived, or you saw people on fire, or you got injured, or you saw dead bodies, the PTSD and how that can manifest in you. So you might also have, I don't know, breathed in a lot of like asbestos into your lungs, but the trauma and the way that that manifests in your body combines with that to greatly increase your chances of becoming ill and dying early.
Yeah, and that's a whole area of science, which is still very, very undeveloped and misunderstood. Is about the effects of trauma and
Yeah,
emotion on a cellular level on the body. There's what's that field of science called, or field of medicine?
I don't know.
Like, yeah, it's on the tip of my tongue, but yeah, like that's still, they're still this anonymous they're still looking into, there's just how strong the effects of that can be. But talking of PTSD, I
Yes,
did want to say, yeah, like when we were talking before and about therapy and about NATs, that negative automatic thinking or negative automatic thoughts, one of the strategies that my therapist suggested was to think of them. So if you name them NATs, NATs, but think of them more as NATs, like GNATS, which is very timely because I've got an infestation of fungus gnats at the moment, which are those tiny little flies that live in your house plants.
there's always something with you, Sue.
There's always
There's
something
always something.
flying around in here. Um, but yeah, if you think of them as gnats and try and um, swash them away. Is that the word? Swash doesn't sound right.
Swish,
When you swish them
swish,
away, swish,
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 swish.
swish, swish, bish.
Yeah.
Um, but swish them away as if they were gnats, and try and do the same with that negative automatic thinking. And I mean, it was a strategy that I suppose the first step in it is being conscious that you're going through negative automatic thinking, because often when you're in these narratives, you're so lost in the narrative itself. Like you say, you get to the
Yeah.
supermarket and you're still imagining what would have happened if,
Yeah.
the cyclist had crashed or whatever. So yeah, like being aware, but then you're also just being aware of them and being able to sort of swish them away, swish, swish, bish. Um,
So one other thing about this 9/11 and the toxic, because there was all like concrete particles and asbestos, and
mm,
this was pulverized into a fine powder and people were breathing in. I think the government at the time told people that it was safe and not to panic, so they didn't panic the population. But now the CDC, I don't know what that stands for, the
Center for Disease Control.
Disease Control, they estimate that there are more than 400,000 people that were exposed to dangerous levels of the toxic
Wow.
dust down there. And they think that maybe a lot more people have become ill or died than they know of, because people who are getting ill are not associating it with the experience, because
Right.
maybe they
Yeah.
just went to school there when they were 5 years old,
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's a
because
very
there was some.
transient population, or any
Yeah,
big
or
city
like
like that.
Wall Street opened up again a few days later or something, and then there were some schools and colleges that opened again, or hotels, and there were people in the area, and that dust was over everything, even as far, into Brooklyn. So obviously, the further
Oh, I
away
think
you
it went a
were,
lot further than that. I think it
yeah,
was
the
like,
further
yeah.
away you were, the less at risk you were. But so people, and even a lot of the volunteers and that came to help in the months afterwards, came from around the world, not only just
Wow.
around the country. And so then they dispersed again. So they don't actually know how many people were impacted at a level high enough to have negative consequences on their health. And there are a lot of people who have developed cancer in their lives, like 25 years later, who are just attributing it to, oh, that's cancer that somebody got, and they
Yeah,
don't know.
not making the
But
correlation.
one of the positive things that I read in this story about this, because this was in a story by Cindy Augustine. Um, it was actually published last year on the 11th of September, and it was called 9/11's Long Legacy: How the Attack on the World Trade Center is Still Claiming Lives.
Mm,
One of the positives of this was that um, the cancer survival rates in the first responders down there is actually quite high because they're getting free healthcare that they wouldn't normally get from the government. So they're having
right.
a lot of screening and treatments that are catching illnesses and cancers early.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of civilians that aren't getting that same level of care. And that's where it's showing up like 25 years later in the population.
Yeah.
Um, there's this I wanted to jump from that to something else that this got me thinking about something else. A story I read once again on the BBC. I think that's all I ever read. But this story by Tom Bennett called Very, Very Toxic: The Risk of Asbestos in Gaza's Rubble.
Oh,
And
right.
this is something that I hadn't thought about until I started on this line of thinking with not my 9/11 fascination. Could you imagine? You've seen pictures of what Gaza looks like,
Hmm.
and there is apparently a lot of asbestos in the buildings there, plus all of the concrete that has been pulverized and turned into dust.
Yeah.
What is going on with that rubble there? How many Palestinians, aid workers, members of the press, etc., have been exposed to toxic dust?
Hmm.
And how is that, like we're seeing with 9/11 a quarter of a century later? What's going
Hmm.
to happen to any of those people who did survive in
Yeah. I mean,
Gaza in 25 years' time?
we've been so focused on the immediate safety of Gazans, um, and survival of the remaining Gazans that, yeah, like yeah, like I don't think many people have thought about the long term health effects of the invasion and the genocide,
Yeah,
and the
because
destruction of buildings.
you talked about PTSD and how that manifests. I mean, you've got, little kids with no family members, and they've
Yeah.
seen their family members killed in front of them. So they're gonna live with the physical and mental manifestations of that trauma,
Mm,
but that coupled with breathing toxic dust, malnutrition, like
hmm.
dirty, unsanitary water, um, and, families that have been torn apart. Um, Also, there's no infrastructure to help people when they become sick because
Mm,
I think all of the hospitals have been destroyed in Gaza, or
mm.
there is no medical personnel. A lot of medical personnel have been
And then no
killed.
medical supplies getting through. Yeah.
So that really got me thinking. Like we really fascinate on, and there's so much written about in a sympathetic way about 9/11 and how people are still suffering the effects of that. But we don't really talk about the press. I don't know if I'm just being, I don't know, a hysterical, soft-hearted liberal or whatever, but I don't feel like
Snowflake.
the snowflake. I don't feel like the
Bleeding heart
press
liberal.
really talks about what's going on in Gaza, other than a really surface view of, oh, these number of people or this happened. Like we're not
Yeah. I mean,
talking
the
about.
only other, yeah,
Sorry, you go.
I was going to say the only other sort of somewhat related discourse I've seen around that is the obvious thing about, if Israel, um, if Israel really wanted some sort of resolution to this, then what do they think they're doing to a whole new generation of Palestinians by continuing this genocide? They are, I mean, it's stating the obvious, but I feel like sometimes you have to in this situation because it's just so mind-boggling. It's so baffling that
Yeah.
Israel pursues this just fucking outrageous, awful, you know, bombardment, and it's yeah, like you're just creating surely a new generation of people who are going to grow up feeling a huge amount of hatred towards Israel and Jews. You know, like I mean, yes, you can rationalize it and separate Judaism from the state of Israel. But in simple terms, I think you're going to create a whole new generation of people who detest Israel and Jewish people, which it's really just literally just pushing the problem further down the road. It's not
Do you think
solving anything.
similarly, like how the US and the Allies uh, sort of strengthened hatred and distrust of Westerners with like the war on terror?
Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah, exactly. Um,
I
so
I mean,
yeah, it's
I
just
don't even know. Like we talk a lot about Gaza on here. I mean, it's something that as thinking and caring people, it's impossible to ignore. But it's starting to feel, I don't know, like almost redundant because nothing. There seems to be no recourse. There seems to be no, hundreds of thousands or millions of people can march or make their voices heard, and the people in power don't do anything about it.
yeah,
So
yeah. I don't. There's probably not much more we can add to the conversation which hasn't been said already, but it's just more and more people add their names to the critique of Israel or the outrage
yeah,
over their actions. But does anything really change? And even if tomorrow, I mean, I know there's this supposed ceasefire on at the moment, and we could get into that if you want, but even if tomorrow there was some kind of permanent resolution and all parties were happy, like you said, like there's the there's the fallout, there's the health fallout that's going to
mhm,
affect people for generations to come. And I mean, I don't know. I've not read about this. It's speculative, but you could argue there are probably some Israelis who are going to be affected by that as well, because I mean, Israelis live right up against, the border with Gaza,
well,
and
you've
so
also got the settlers too, but that's a different
the
story.
settlers, yeah, and there are other countries in the region as well. I don't know how far-reaching the toxic cloud or whatever of asbestos and concrete and whatever else reaches,
Yeah,
but you've got that. But then, yeah, you've also got the trauma, the PTSD, and you've got
mm,
the hatred and the um yeah I don't know what other word to use really, just the hatred towards Israel for their actions that it's going to
yeah.
fester and fester and fester for generations to come. So
Uncle Fester, remember him?
hmm I didn't know that he had a twin. Um, so yeah, it's I don't know what else we can say that hasn't been said before, but yeah, you do.
We just need to keep
Well,
doing what we
yeah,
can within our
keep
realm
doing
of.
what, keep doing what, keep
Uh,
talking about it. I also, I'm reading a book at the moment which I'm enjoying. It's Barbara Kingsolver. I think I've talked about her on the podcast before. She's an American author, and this is the third book I've read by her. I think she's a brilliant, brilliant writer. And I'm reading a book of hers at the moment called Flight Behavior, and it's about sort of poor, rural, working class woman who lives on a farm, and uh, monarch butterflies migrating come to her farm in Tennessee when they shouldn't. They should be
mhm.
going back to Mexico, but anyway, whatever reason. And there's a really good bit I'm reading at the moment, which is about, and obviously it's fiction, but I think it's good because it taps into reality so much. And it's about how there's a character in there from the West Coast of America who's come to talk about climate change. And he's got this like manifesto pledge. He's trying to sign people up to his pledge to make changes in their lifestyle. And he's going through the checklist with her, and none of it applies to her because she's poor and she's working class. So it's things like, reduce the amount of meat you eat in your diet, and um, reduce the amount of investments you have in, you know, companies that do damage to the earth, like change your
Yeah,
bank. Uh, it's like, when shopping for new home appliances, choose, it's all just like that real cliched, stereotypical stuff that has been
yeah,
used in like, climate change awareness over the past decade or more. And it's funny because it's like, yeah, the people that do the most damage are the ones trying to sort of sit there and talk about what we need to do to to resolve the situation. Um,
yeah.
And it just,
I
yeah.
I always think, I think I've mentioned it here before, but for some reason I always think of this interview with Belinda Carlisle from the 80s,
Oh, yeah.
where it must have been in the height of her drug abuse. Like, she was a self-professed drug
Oh,
user.
yeah. Yeah.
And this interview I read with her where she was talking about how important saving the planet is to her, and that if if then the newspaper or Smash Hits or whoever it was said to her, "What advice have you got to young people?" And she said, "If you're leaving the room for less than a minute, but you're going to come back in the room, just leave the light on, because switching it on and off for that minute uses more electricity than just leaving it on." And I just always remember this nonsense piece of advice from Belinda Carlisle, who
But
must have been like coked out of her mind.
but was this around the time she released her single "Leave a Light On for Me"?
Um, maybe.
Like, was it like a really like sick, twisted, humorous way of promoting her single? So like she could be like, "Just
Darling,
leave a
leave a
light
light
on,"
on for me.
and by the way, I've got a
You're
song about
saving
that.
electricity by, and I always think of that whenever I go to turn a light out. Like, this is like 35 years later. I I think every time I go to turn a light out, I think,
You think
do
of
I need
Belinda
to?
Carlisle?
Well, I think, do I need to switch it back on within the next
Oh,
minute?
okay, okay.
Because if I do, it's better to leave it on because it's going to use more power
I
to turn it on and off.
I think it was a really clever marketing ploy by Belinda or her team to be like, okay, we're gonna harness. Maybe she wrote the song just with that in mind. Like it was a really concerted songwriting effort to try and maximize, climate hysteria.
Her book is wild. Did you read it?
No, I think.
Her
Did you give it to
autobiography.
me? I don't
I
know.
don't know, but her description of her drug use is wild. Like, most
Mm,
people would think, "Oh, Belinda Carlisle from the Go-Go's, and she was a pop singer. It can't be that wild." She was taking so many drugs. It is almost unbelievable to read. Like, it is wild. She rented an apartment that was empty in Marina del Rey or somewhere just so she would have somewhere to go and do drugs.
mm.
It was so, like, she'd go in there and close the curtains and sit in this, like, dark, empty apartment and do drugs.
Do you think
Like,
she
I
left the
it's
light? Do you think she left the light on, Sue?
well, there was probably no electricity, so, um, talking about the 1980s, I went to
Hmm.
the cinema last night, to the Prince Charles Cinema, not the Nickel,
Thanks for
um, but
clarifying.
but, circling back to one of our favorite topics here, we've done the CPAP recap, we've done Gaza. I'm going to go back to vampires. Last night we went to see a screening of the 1987 classic, The Lost Boys.
Oh wow, love that.
Oh my God, like, so many good things about it. But how amazing is Diane Wiest?
Oh yeah, yeah. She's brilliant.
So good. She plays the mum.
Yeah.
There's so many amazing people in the movie. I
Oh,
mean,
Keeper,
Corey
the two
Feldman.
Corys.
Yeah,
Is
Corey and Corey.
Yeah, both
Um,
Corys were in it. Corey Haim and
y-
Corey Feldman, Keeper
yeah,
Sutherland.
and Jamie Gertz,
Yeah.
and but Diane Wiest, and also, what's his name? Edward Herman, uh,
Oh,
who was in Gilmore Girls.
yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah, he's in it as well. It is such a
yeah.
fun movie. Of course, it's a little bit dated because they tried to make it cool for, like, the 80s. Like, they tried to put stuff in, like, people were talking about MTV, or there's that scene where they're at a concert at the beach where there's this muscle dude playing the saxophone, and but it is so
'Cause
good.
that was
Corey
that's what
Feldman.
happened in the 80s.
Yeah, all the time. Corey Feldman is so good. You think of him in, like, The Goonies and, like, everything he's been in, as well, maybe not in later years, but that's not for now, Sue, but as a kid, he was so talented. Um, I When I go and see a movie, we've talked about this before, you're often in the aftermath of seeing the movie or the TV show, or sometimes during if you're at home, you wanna Google some
Mm,
stuff and you wanna find out about the people who were in it.
mhm,
I found out that obviously Kiefer Sutherland is a Nepo baby, right? He's related to so many famous Sutherlands.
mhm,
Jason Patrick, who was like the lead teenage boy who was fighting not to become a vampire,
mm.
his father was a playwright I think his name was Jason Miller, and he played the priest in The Exorcist. Was it The Exorcist? What's the one with Father Damien in it? Not not Damien the kid in The Omen. What's the horror movie where the priest is
I think it is The Exorcist.
The Exorcist? So
Yeah.
that's his dad, and then
Okay.
also he was related to heaps of other famous people as well. But the wildest piece of gossip that I've got about the Lost Boys,
Mhm.
Jason Patrick and Kiefer Sutherland were the two lead young men in the movie, and that was in 1987. It was released, and they became best friends. And shortly after that, Kiefer Sutherland got engaged to be married to Julia Roberts, so they were a couple. And in 1991, 3 days before Kiefer Sutherland and Julia Roberts were meant to be married, she left him and started a relationship with Jason Patrick.
No
So
way.
left him for his best friend, who was also from the Lost Boys.
That's wild.
And on the day that they were meant to be married, she traveled with Jason Patrick to Ireland on a holiday together to go away. And they stayed together for about a year. But Kiefer Sutherland and Jason Patrick then didn't speak to each other for 10 years. And now they're friends again, like as adults, because, they're like nearly
Wow.
60 or whatever. But isn't that wild? Do you remember, like, when we were kids, like, how distant that sort of celebrity gossip, like Winona and Johnny Depp or
Hmm.
Julia Roberts and Kiefer Sutherland, like how exotic and exciting that sort of
Yeah, and I mean, I
gossip was.
suppose, yeah, it wasn't like a new phenomenon. I think for centuries people have gossiped and, loved to tell stories about, I don't know, like, I suppose the demographic has changed over time. Like, for a long time, it was the royals or the aristocracy, but then in more recent years, it's about, famous people, and
And
now
now
a
it's
lot
about
of it is to
nobodies,
influencers
like
yeah,
influencers. You don't even
yeah.
have to have a skill or anything.
No, no, it's weird. It's just, yeah, this sort of fascination with other people's lives. And obviously, I'm not going to get on my soapbox about it soon, but obviously reality TV.
I just but going back to the cast, like
Mm.
Diane Wiest, what else have you seen her in that you liked?
Oh my God.
Can you think?
Well, she was brilliant in Parenthood.
Well, I know her from Footloose.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the first thing that I remember her from, if somebody asked me, would be The Lost Boys. The second thing would be Edward Scissorhands.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
She always seemed to play the same, or still plays, she's still alive. She still always seemed to have that same sort of caring, mummy sort of
Yeah. Yeah.
figure,
Often, yeah.
a
Often
little
playing like
offbeat.
a single mom.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
a little unusual or um, one thing I thought about, do you remember The Lost Boys very well?
Yeah. Yeah. How
So do
did
you know what's
I was
that?
gonna say, like, how did Corey Haim die? I can't remember. He was quite young, wasn't he?
Drugs. Yeah,
Was it drugs?
drugs.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, him and all of those young boys around that era, especially him and Corey Feldman. And Corey Feldman's talked about it a lot, about the abuse that they suffered in the Hollywood system. They were given
Mm,
drugs, like what happened to Drew Barrymore as well. They were
mm,
given drugs, they were sexualized. Corey Feldman talked a lot about men that would like exploit them sexually when they were young.
mhm,
It's very sad. And so Corey Haim really suffered as he grew into adulthood. He couldn't cope. Obviously, there's the trauma of the fame and everything as well, but then also the PTSD and the manifestation of the trauma that he went through.
mm,
It was too much for him, and yeah, he became more and more dependent on drugs and substances. And I don't know if it was an accident or if he deliberately took his life, but it's very sad. And I mean, I love Corey Feldman. He has said some problematic things, but he's also a survivor of a traumatic system.
yeah,
And to me, he's a legend of that era. For me, when I was a kid, I mean, I was 13 when The Lost Boys came out. Like, I was so enraptured by it.
mm.
I loved it so much. Um, but I was going to say something else about that. but I can't remember now. Oh,
I just remember like the romantic setting, like I just thought it was set in Santa Cruz, wasn't it? Like
well, it
it
was
was.
filmed in Santa Cruz. The town was called Santa Clarita or something.
Oh, okay.
Um,
But
but
yeah, it was.
the yeah the it was directed by Joel Schumacher, but it was originally meant to be directed by Richard Donner, who did The Goonies.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I think in the credits now, he's listed as having an executive producer role because
Oh,
he had a falling out with them and while it was getting ready to be filmed. But I think all of the original screenplay was meant to be more childish like The Goonies, but he suggested they take it into a sexier teen sort of
okay,
angle. But then
okay.
he fell out with them, but they kept him on as sort of his name on at least as executive
Exec.
producer. But do you remember Corey Haim's character in it? He's like the younger brother of the main family. He I was watching it last night, and it's a lens I've never really thought of before. It seemed like they were trying to make him either queer coded or um, like ambiguous around his sexuality because obviously his
Oh,
older brother was like into girls and was chasing the girls but whenever they showed Corey Haim's character, Sam, he wasn't really saying anything about girls. He was obviously into comic books. He liked fashion. He talked about MTV. He had
mm,
like a Rob Lowe poster on his wall. Like there were no
yeah.
posters of
I
young
remember
women on
that.
his
I remember
wall.
that actually. Yeah.
And so it was weird that there was a teenage boy who they didn't try and show as like red-blooded hetero. And he woke up one day like he was scared or his mum called him or something and he had a t-shirt on I think it said Born to Shop. And it just struck me as like they were maybe not trying to make it flagrant, but trying to make it like for if you know kind of thing that
Yeah. Well, I mean, in the
he was
1980s, like you just couldn't do that in a mainstream, studio
yeah.
film, could you? But yeah, that's interesting. I feel
Yeah,
like that's
and
what. Go on.
well,
Don't
also
want
when
to
they
cut
were
you
at the
off.
beach where they see Jamie Gertz for the first time, what's her character's name? Star? Or they see her for
Yeah,
the first
maybe.
time and you know, the older brother, Mychal, is like looking at her through the crowd and is mesmerized by her. His younger brother, like, pushes his head away, like, don't look at that girl. And it just kind of feels like a little bit like he doesn't make any lewd comments like, oh, she's hot, or I see what you're
Yeah,
looking at. He just tries to get
smoking.
he just tries to get his brother's attention away and say, oh, don't
Yeah,
waste your time with that. And so yeah, it just made me feel, and it reminded me of like Salminio in
some
Rebel Without a
rebel
Cause.
without cause.
Yeah,
Yeah,
where
yeah.
he's got like an Alan Ladd poster or signed picture or something inside his locker, and he's clearly. I went to say queerly. He's
Queerly.
queerly clear. So
Um, but no, I was just gonna say, I thought that's what Stranger Things, like the what are the brothers called? Whatever their name is,
Duffy brothers.
Duffer,
Is it
Duffer
Duffy?
brothers. I thought it was Duffer. Anyway, whatever their names are, I thought that's what they did so well, particularly in like the first and second season, making Will that sort of like queer coded character. So, it was never sort of explicitly stated, but there were
Yeah,
all those sort of like, subtle nods to him being a bit different or whatever, and that queer coding. And, I mean, they basically created that series in many ways as a sort of homage to all of those films of the 80s, in
yeah,
so many
it's
ways.
very Goonies coded, isn't it?
Goonies, E.T., like,
Lost Boys.
Lost, yeah, it's like really taps into so many of those sort of tropes. Um, but yeah, that being one of them, like making that character Will sort of not explicitly, but like queer coding him in many ways. Um,
I like how that the Lost Boys is like a reference, a very clear, explicit reference to Peter Pan. That
mm,
like the Peter Pan, the group of kids that he hangs out with are called the Lost Boys because they never grow up, and
mm,
and so having this story about vampires because these young men are never going to grow any older.
mm.
I just it speaks to me on so many levels, like
Was it? was it a screenplay or was it adapted from something? Do you
No, I
know?
think somebody wrote it as a screenplay, and they originally wrote it as, like, a younger storyline, and
Right.
I think, yeah, it was gonna be more Goonies-esque. It was gonna be a little bit cheeseball comedy, and then
Yeah.
they rewrote it and took it in this direction of, "Oh, no, it needs to appeal to older sort of teens," and,
Mhm.
I mean, it was very popular. I think it cost, I don't know, say $12 million to make, or no, maybe it cost about 30 million to make, and in the US it took nearly 90 million at the box office. Like, it was a very popular, successful film.
Mhm.
It it didn't get the greatest reviews when it came out, but I mean, if you saw this cinema last night was completely crowded. It was in the large room at the Prince Charles, and people were applauding through the film, like these young people. Like, I'm there, I'm in my 50s. I remember it from the
Mm.
first time, but there
Mhm.
were young people who looked about 19 or 20, mostly, in the cinema, and some of the corny lines or the cheeseball things that happens, like people are cheering and clapping, and when the first time Corey Feldman came on screen, everyone cheered. Like, people were like,
Oh, okay.
we love him. And there's this, how there's some in the 80s, like the Goonies, but these 80s movies have these like really sassy one-liners that become famous, and you say them again and again. And there's this one where one of the vampires dies. Can I give a spoiler away for this
Yeah.
one
I
scene
mean, the film was released 40 years ago, so I think you
where
can.
Corey Haim like fires an arrow and goes through one of the vampires, and it goes into the stereo behind him, and it starts like electrocuting him, but he's also dying from being staked through the heart. But the stereo starts playing that In Excess and Jimmy Barnes song, "Good Times." Gonna have a good time tonight,
Uh,
and then
yeah.
he like dies and falls, and Corey Haim goes, "Whoa, death by stereo." And
Yeah.
everyone in the cinema
So
was just like,
cheesy.
"Yeah!"
So cheesy. I love it.
But I remember when I was a kid, that was the best thing that I'd ever seen. Like, I was like, "Oh my god, like, I wanna be a vampire, but I also wanna be one of these kids that fights the vampires." Like, it's so cool. And I wanna go to
Mm.
that fairground on the beach in wherever it is, California. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I loved it.
Amazing. I
So
I'm I'm just trying to remember what else Corey Haim was in. I mean, I've seen some terrible stuff that he did. He was in an awful film called License to Drive. But I'm
yeah,
trying to think what else he was in. Um,
let's have a quick Google.
do some live research.
Well, he wasn't in a lot of great movies
Yeah.
because, like, he did kind of fall off. Him and, all these young Hollywood stars did. Like, look how long it took Drew Barrymore to claw her way back to the A-list.
Yeah.
Like, she really struggled. I can
Yeah.
remember she was in a movie, like, she was in a lot of, like, D-grade movies about,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
just crummy
A lot
straight
of
to
like a
VHS.
lot of real, true story, like not like not like schmaltzy stuff, but just like low
Yeah.
budget.
Wasn't she in
Yeah.
something like Long Island Lolita or something? But,
Mm,
um, I remember there was a movie she was in where it was like a Western with, like, 4 women leads, like maybe Mary Stuart Masterson was in it, and
this is Drew.
yeah, Drew, and I can remember the director who took it over said she got to set, and she found Drew in this crummy breakdown trailer crying, and she said, like, I came in, I got her a new trailer. I told her they had to treat her like a star because she had been a star since she was like 3 years old. And they were treating her like this Z grade celebrity on this set of this Hollywood movie. And that
Mm,
kind of like was the turnaround for Drew, that, then she started to get taken more seriously. And then a few years later, like, there was obviously Charlie's Angels, where she was like,
mm.
producer on that. And anyway, Dream a Little Dream with Corey Haim.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
Lucas was one of his first big movies, which was before The Lost Boys, License to Drive. There's a lot that you've never heard of. I'm not even gonna read them out
yeah.
because they make no sense. But he really started to fall off. I mean, he was in a National Lampoon's movie, Dream a
Didn't
Little
know.
Dream 2, Demolition High, really terrible, terrible, like, Snowboard Academy. I don't even know what some of the. It says he was in Batman and Robin, but uncredited in Batman and Robin as a biker
That
gang
must have
member.
been one of his last. Must have been one of his last
No.
roles. No.
Well, he did something right up until 2014. Oh, poor guy. You know, like I feel really sorry for him, and any young man that went, a boy who struggled into adolescence because of abuse and substance abuse and trauma. I feel a lot of affinity for them, and it makes me incredibly sad to reflect on it. I mean, this is a bit of a downer of a way to end the episode, but I mean, pour one out for Corey Haim. I mean, he was such a positive force for young people in the 80s. So
Yeah, well, pouring out for all of the, young people who get, churned through that horrible, manipulative, destructive, abusive industry, or any industry, where it happens, where abuse of power happens, and some survive and some don't, and those that do survive often have a lot of scars to show for it.
Well, I've been listening to that podcast, The Blocks, and I was listening to an interview with Johnny Knoxville this week, and also Tom Green, who used to be married to Drew Barrymore. And they talked even as adults about the trauma that they've experienced and the decades of therapy they've needed to cope with fame. And so imagine that happening to little kids. Like Drew was a child, like not even a teenager. I mean, she was a little
and
baby.
The situations she was put in, or allowed to
Yeah,
be
she was in
just
nightclubs doing drugs when she wasn't even like 11 or something.
No,
So
exactly.
yeah, it's very traumatic.
Yeah.
But
I mean, we
anyway,
haven't got time to get into it, but yeah, like that Virginia Giuffre's I can't say it, posthumous, is that how you pronounce it? Posthumous biography just came out this week, and she talked so much about Harvey Weinstein, and
Jeffrey Epstein, you mean?
Not Harvey Weinstein, Jeffrey Epstein. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, and all of that.
Prince Andrew.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I wouldn't mind
to
talking about that. Maybe a future
Maybe next
episode.
week.
But yeah, these fucking monsters, just horrible, absolutely horrible.
Let's wrap up then. In the meantime,
such a downer of an episode.
I know, what a way to end.
Child actors dying of
trauma,
drug overdoses.
gnats. So you know where to find out all the links in the show notes about stuff we've talked about today, about what we're getting up to, how you can find out about what's happening in our lives. But do subscribe wherever you're listening or watching this podcast. Any last thoughts, Sean?
Oh, I don't know.
I mean, turn that light off. Turn that light off if you're going to leave the room for more than
a minute. I don't even know if it was a minute, but if it's more than a minute, if it's less than a minute, leave the light on. Leave it on for Belinda.
If it's less than the length of the song "Leave a Light On for Me" by Belinda Carlisle, then probably leave it on. But otherwise, turn it off. Yeah. All right, keep swishing away those gnats. Swish, swish, bish, and we'll be back in your feeds next week.
All right, see you.
Bye.